morning, everyone. So my name is Will Weisman. I'm the Executive Director of Singularity University. It is my great pleasure to be able to welcome you here to Exponential Manufacturing. For those of you who are non-natives, it's also my great pleasure to be able to welcome you to Boston. So I actually grew up here, went to Weston High, and so it's a great thrill to be back here to be able to introduce the inaugural Exponential Manufacturing Conference. This is an amazing city, as we know. It's played an incredibly important role in the history of America, and it's been really exciting to see kind of the increasing role that it's playing around manufacturing, and to see companies like General Electric or Autodesk starting to make major investments here. So for those of you who are new to SU, I want to take just a few minutes to tell you a little bit about who we are, about what makes us tick, what we're passionate about, and a little bit about our founding story. So you can think of us as part think tank, part educator, and part new company accelerator. So it's a fairly complex ecosystem, but at our core, we're really about social impact. So it's about how do we make the world a better place? How do we leverage technologies to go out and really change the world for the positive? We've identified these 11 global grand challenges, and these are areas where we think that technology can have an outsized implication or impact on changing the world, on moving the world forward. So SU was founded in 2008 by these gentlemen. You're going to get to hear from both of them over these next 2 days. They came together at a TED conference, actually, of all things. Ray had written a book called The Singularity is Near, and after reading the book, Peter was incredibly moved, and they came together to kind of talk about this important era that we were entering, this era that was going to be filled with dramatic change. There was no place that people could go to really understand what was going to be happening, to understand about the acceleration of technology, and to really prepare for these coming years. So Peter Diamandis is half of the equation. I think he has one of the coolest jobs and coolest lives in the world. He is involved with all sorts of really extraordinary companies besides Singularity. He is the chairman of XPRIZE. He's involved with the founding of Human Longevity, Planetary Resources. He is an author of Bold and Abundance, also involved with a company called Bold Capital. It's his work with Bold and Abundance, this kind of abundant mindset, really, that it's almost kind of the lens at which SU kind of looks at the world. So it's this belief that technology, if used in the right way, can really be an incredible force for good. And so that kind of colors everything that we look at, try to be realistic about the world, but also believe that very much with the right efforts and the right mindset that you can steer it in a very positive direction. So Ray Kurzweil is the other half of the equation here. He is an inventor, he is an author, he is a director of engineering over at Google, absolutely a brilliant thinker. He is a chancellor of Singularity University, and he's going to be joining us tomorrow. We're super excited for that. So Ray did some research as part of his efforts around the Singularity is Near, and what he realized is that technology, information technology, basically has been growing at a very steady pace for over the last kind of 115 years or so. And it didn't really matter what technology it was. What we saw was basically as one technology started to peter out, a new technology came online, and that kind of took the charge. And so it was a series of S-curves that together formed a very, very smooth curve, an exponential curve, and basically that no matter what was going on in the world, where it was war or peace, feast or famine, that the world kind of marched forward. And so this insight really is what basically led to the founding of SU, and this belief that, okay, if you could understand that technology was going to continue to progress this way, that you could basically make some predictions about where the world was going and how you might prepare for that. And Ray, as a result of this insight, has become one of the most accurate predictors of the future. So you hear us talk a lot about exponentials. So exponentials are this idea of something doubling over a fixed period of time as opposed to linear growth. Peter is going to be talking in detail about this. But I just, through this chart, wanted to just give you a quick sense of the power of it. So what happens is, it seems like it's very steady, slow, almost deceiving growth. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in this chart on step 26, roughly, where things start to change dramatically. And it's really in those last 5 or 6 steps, as you start to get towards the end of it, that all of a sudden extraordinary things are happening. And so we right now are in a period where we're starting to see some of these extraordinary things happen. And so it's things that, autonomous vehicles, all sorts of things where basically you might not have imagined 5 years ago that we could be growing organs or have self-driving vehicles, or that solar could be potentially cheaper than fossil fuels as an energy source. And What we're going to try to do over this conference is help you understand kind of how to think exponentially and hopefully give you a lot of examples of where this technology is going. So we focus on 8 accelerating technologies. These are areas that are information technology, so they've crossed over, and they are now all growing exponentially. There are areas where we see them converging, and you'll hear us talk a lot about convergence over these next 2 days, because that, in many ways, is the most important takeaway. Historically, you might have been very focused on your industry. There might be a dominant technology that was really driving it. But what we're seeing now is that it's technologies from disparate industries and technologies that you might not have been involved with before that are really having the biggest impact. So it's when these 2 or 3 of these technologies come together, you see some of these really significant changes. So the World Economic Forum recently came out with a report and talked about there being 4 industrial revolutions that I just wanted to kind of quickly walk through to set a little context here. So the first was in 1784. This was really around mechanization, and this was how water power and steam power led to mechanization. In the late 1800s, we had the division of labor and electricity driving mass production. Major changes. And then in the third revolution, we had electronics and IT powering automated production. You can see we're moving kind of with each of these further up the exponential curve. Things are happening faster. And you'll see now that in this fourth revolution, so the last one was 1969. Now today we're just at the beginning part of this next revolution. This is really digital, physical, and biological systems coming together. And this is an area an era unlike really any of these previous revolutions. Just the velocity, the scope, its impact throughout the world. So we really are entering this very, very extraordinary time. We're seeing it have impact and implications really all over the world. So this is truly a global phenomenon. I'm sure this is a very international crowd here. I'm sure many of you are experiencing this. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of change that's taking place. We're seeing kind of a reorganization taking place in terms of the manufacturing landscape and the competitive index. So Deloitte does a study, their Global CEOs Competitive Index. And what's interesting is in 2010, the US was ranked number 4 in that study. This year, the U.S. is ranked number 2 in that study, and by the end of the decade, it's predicted to be the number 1 most competitive spot. So it's interesting just to think, probably 5-10 years ago, I don't think anyone would have thought of the U.S. as being really at the apex of the manufacturing world. And I think that just speaks to the rate of change that's happening and how uncertain this landscape is, and how all of us really in this room have the opportunity to kind of help shape that landscape. This conference is very much about hopefully preparing you for the changes ahead. We're going to inundate you with a lot of content. We're going to have about 50 speakers over these next 2 days, so a lot going on, a lot to take on. My hope is, though, by the time this is done, instead of feeling like, okay, there's all this change coming, this is really less about disruptive stress, and it's really about, here is a disruptive opportunity. Here's a chance for me to take my company in a new direction, to create a new company. There'll be all sorts of incredible wealth that will be generated as a result of this. And again, at our core, we think this is also really an opportunity for people to take the world, solve some of the world's biggest problems. Peter talks a lot about if you want to make $1 billion, solve a problem that addresses 1 billion people. And a lot of the companies that we're working with, we're trying to help guide them to some of these global grand challenges as great new growth opportunities for them. These conferences are about connection. There's going to be actually over 500 people here over the next couple of days. We'll have about 400 in this room, thought leaders from all over the world. We see incredible connections come out of our conferences. We see new business relationships. We see new partnerships. Joint ventures get kicked off. Companies get funded. Personal relationships happen sometimes. It's really an amazing opportunity, but it's up to you really to go and take advantage of that. And so really encourage you to kind of reach out to get to know folks. We've tried to structure this in a way that you'll have a lot of opportunities to connect with folks and meet new people, but also very much takes kind of your mindset to welcome that and participate in that. So I wanted to share a video that I really love. These conferences are really about learning as well. I mean, we're going to have an awful lot of information for you to absorb. This video is created by a group called ENSO for Khan Academy, and resonates with me personally and reminds us, I think, of the plasticity of the brain, our ability to continue to grow, and I think just a nice way to kind of kick things off before we get into the actual learning.
Nobody's born smart. We all start at zero. Can't talk, can't walk, certainly can't do algebra. Adding, reading, writing, riding a bike? Nobody's good at anything at first. There was a time when Einstein couldn't count to 10. And Shakespeare had to learn his ABCs just like the rest of us. Thankfully, we're born to learn. Slowly, surely, you stumble, slip, crawl, fall, and fail and fall. Frustrating, confusing, trying, struggling, until one day, you walk. One foot in front of the other, one idea on top of the next, each wrong answer making your brain a little bit stronger. Failing is just another word for growing, and you keep going. This is learning. Knowing that you'll get it, even if you haven't gotten it yet. Because the most beautiful, complex concepts in the whole universe are built on basic ideas that anyone, anywhere, can understand. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you only have to know one thing. You can learn anything.
I love that, and it's one of my favorite things about this job is getting to get exposed to so many extraordinary people and talks and concepts, and always having a great opportunity to grow and learn. So before we get into the actual conference, I want to quickly take a moment to thank some folks. As you know, extraordinary amount of effort goes into running a conference, and especially kicking off a first conference. So this is by far the best launch of a new conference we've ever had, and a lot of that credit goes to Deloitte. I want to really thank them for, it's probably been about 6 months actually of effort. So an amazing team there. They are actually the platinum partner of all of our conferences, so the Singularity University conferences series, and help underwrite each of the conferences. I want to particularly thank Joanne Michalek and Michelle Drew and their team, who have worked tirelessly on this effort to make this all happen. So thank you so much, Deloitte, for your continuing support. Also want to thank the great folks at Caterpillar. They are a platinum partner of the conference. Greg Foley and George Taylor, thank you so much, you and your teams, for your support here. Both Deloitte and Caterpillar are going to have some great demos out and back that I hope you'll have a chance to go take a look at. But thank you. Caterpillar's done a lot of stuff with SU for quite a while now, and really excited to have them in the family. Lastly, I'd like to thank Beth Comstock, who is our sponsor over at GE. We're particularly excited to have them involved, and really looking forward to when we come back here next year. As you know, GE is going to be moving their headquarters out here, so excited to have them participate next year as well. I will not read everyone on this list, but there are a lot of folks who have made both SU possible and this conference possible. Big, big thank you to everyone for your continued support in what we're doing and our mission, and making these type of events feasible. So the Chinese have a proverb that say, "May you live in interesting times," and I think we all have a sense that these are indeed very, very interesting times. These are times, though, that we think are really exciting in the most positive way, and that we are going to be living through over the next 20 years some of the biggest changes that humanity has ever seen.